All right, all right, all right. This is America. All right. Welcome to We Are Something Else.
We are something else.
No CB tonight. That's Superfly.
My fake CB voice.
Superfly, what's up, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. So, no CB tonight. He's probably on a plane coming back from Columbia. South Carolina.
Oh.
No. Actually, not
he
the
would
country.
be a baller if he was taking a plane from Columbia, Maryland. It'd be in like 5 minutes.
Yeah. So CB, we'll see you next week, but we're gonna hold it down tonight. But in CB's place tonight, we have a friendly face, former face that was on the show a couple weeks ago. Roya is back. Hello, Roya.
Hi.
Roya is gonna be filling in for CB, and no short jokes because actually she's probably taller than CB, so we don't have any jokes tonight about that.
I'm actually shorter than him.
But we have a special guest to the show tonight. Great guy. I've known him for a while. He's an author. You need to get up on this guy. We're going to learn a lot about him in the second part of the show. But welcome Robert Williams to the show. Rob, say what's up.
How you doing? What's up?
So let's get started. Got a lot to cover tonight, a little bit of time. So the title, we'll start with that. This is America. Fresh off the internet, This is America, because I was going to call it something else, but based off a Childish Gambino track. We just watched the video of This is America, and probably had to watch it 10 more times to actually catch everything that's going on in the show.
Right. I mean, before we even talk about the video, what I think is like amazing right now is that you're seeing, someone who's kind of like right now at the height of their creativity. You're talking about the output of Atlanta, just doing SNL, an amazing last album, that he put out, and then seeing this, I have no idea what's about to come with this album. You know what I mean?
I really feel like he's
doing Star Wars, like,
exactly.
Lando.
He's peaking like everything. He's been out for a while, and that's the thing. And now that everybody's catching on to him, he's becoming like everything is just getting thrown his way, and so which is probably the reason why he's decided, okay, this is gonna be the last Gambino album because I've been doing this forever, and now that everybody's catching on, you need to catch up. Mm-hmm. So
you think he's gonna switch personas or something like that?
I just think he's gonna be done. If he truly sticks to this is the last album, he's probably gonna be done. I mean, he's got a lot going on right now, and then we can talk about Atlanta. Rob, do you watch Atlanta?
I love that show. I love it.
It's
great.
What do you
writing about it.
So I'm from Augusta, which is close to Atlanta. But what I love about it is, the stereotypes of Atlanta are the Real Housewives on one side and trap houses on the other.
Right.
But there's this whole swath of real people in between those extremes that he's touching on in a real way. Even just the visuals of the show look real to me. I mean, everybody in Atlanta is not living in mansions or high rises.
Right.
Most people aren't. And most people don't live next door to the trap house.
Right.
So he's exploring visually what that city really is like and telling interesting, quirky stories.
Yeah.
And I mean, the last episode I just loved. It just reminded me of my middle school experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a question for you. Do you see any inaccuracies within the show?
Inaccuracies? I mean, it's fiction, right? So you're pushing the boundaries of realism by telling stories that are not true, right?
Right.
Like the Teddy Perkins.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on, that was way out there.
Yeah,
but that's what fiction is about, right? It's by making something mundane interesting. And
we talked about Teddy Perkins the week after I saw it, and I was just still in shock.
Yeah.
Just the writing for that is really good. Like I said, whether it's fiction or not, like the writing and just the imagery, the cameras they use very organic, grainy film when to give you like that a gritty feel of,
and the fact he shot it without commercial, or it was aired originally without commercials as kind of like a movie almost. And
right. But just the details of the show too. Like in the last episode, I was like, "Oh, he got the right Georgia flag with the Confederacy symbol on this time." And like it was no longer the Georgia flag, but it was then.
Back then, right?
The racial makeup of the school was just like on point for DeKalb County. The little girl wearing the Smokes jersey,
right?
The Braves jersey, like all those little details.
Also in the store, I was trying to catch all the different. If you looked on the walls of the store, like at one point it had Atlanta, but then it had like other sayings that was in the lights or whatever.
Really?
I gotta on the wall. So go back and rewatch that. One of them I couldn't catch. I couldn't make it out, but there are definitely like Easter eggs all over.
Right, and then that story plays true to current times as well too, just over I guess name brands and bullying and just you have a kid that's probably not as well off as the next kid, and they try to again fit the mold by having something that's got the tag on it just to try to fit in, because if you don't have the right tag, people are going to catch you and they're going to check you.
And I thought it was hilarious. They had like the one dude who was like the expert, who was like
the Asian dude.
Exactly. Right. He was the expert for the whole school on what was real, what was fake.
Right. But to SNL last night, he did a really good job on SNL. He debuted 2 songs, but This Is America, I feel like it's about gun control, because if you haven't seen the video, you should definitely see the video. It's a lot of, again, you have to probably watch it 3 or 4 times to figure out what it really is, what the underlying message is outside of just good music. I think this guy's really stepping up the bar for a lot of these other rappers.
Right. I mean, I think he's operating in a space where I think he is kind of showing people what freedom looks like.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think so many people think they have to either fit a certain mold in order to sell whatever they're trying to sell. Right. And he's kind of just, pushing the boundaries of all of that. And
that's
really
crazy. He's doing something really right, because we're talking about him every single week.
Right. I love that little joke though he said last night about, if you black, you know me from
right. Atlanta Rainbow.
So he's got these personas that fit in different audiences,
and he really was. I don't think he was really noticed much by the black community when he was doing 30 Rock.
I never watched
even 30 Rock or Community. Like I didn't really watch Community, but I watched 30 Rock.
When did you first notice him?
I don't remember. He did a song with Janae Aiko. Okay. That's what I remember him from. And then I can't remember where I first heard of him on TV or saw him on TV, but I really wasn't noticing him until recently.
I think I heard him perform first. I heard some of his music first. I was like, oh, that's that guy from that show. So, and it's probably flip-flop a lot of other people like, oh, that's the guy, that's the guy that recorded that music.
Right.
But
actually, now I remember where I first saw him. He was on Issa Rae's Awkward Black Girl. Actually, she used to reference him a lot on her YouTube series, Awkward Black Girl, and then she did like a whole episode about how she had like a big crush on him, but she never even showed him. And then that's how I noticed him. But he's really underground he was underground, I should say, and then now he's mainstream.
Right. Getting all that money.
Right. He's very talented.
Another guy we've been talking about weekly. We don't have to spend longer than a minute on this dude. Kanye West.
How great, though, first of all, is seeing Childish Gambino and Donald Glover in the wake of all the stuff we've been doing with Kanye.
Exactly.
It's been kind of like, yes. Like, but it's not all that's lost.
It feels like This Is America responds to Kanye's comments on the TMZ about slavery being a choice. Like, it feels like his song is an answer to contradict what Kanye was saying, because it's deep. It makes you thought. I mean, just how we are seen in America, and then it just feels like it's a flip of the message of what Kanye was trying to get across.
So this is all planned, Kanye, and
right. But somebody get that dude some meds, man, for real. Like,
and that's my main point, is that I feel like there shouldn't be so much emphasis on what he said because, one, who made Kanye the voice of all black people? Exactly. Number one. Number two, this is a man who clearly has mental issues. So it just touches more on the stigma of mental health anyway. So when we're talking about someone saying crazy or off, like, you know, the man came to TMZ. First of all, who drives to TMZ?
Right.
In the middle of the day.
Right.
That right there is a sign.
As if it's a press conference or something.
Right, he just drove. That shows that he was in his manic state. But then he got up and said that, you know, the doctors were giving him medications, not the opioids, but like his actual mental medications or whatever you call it. He was saying that, you know, he was taking the doctor had him on pills every single day, but then he had to reduce it to like 2 to 3 times a week because it was killing his genius. So that right there, he's giving you clear indications that he's having mental issues. So we shouldn't really take what he's saying too seriously. Right. We should take it with a grain of salt and then touch on that and show some type of empathy for this man and not try to say, oh, he's canceled, because, you know, we can't forget, you know, everything that he did bring to the culture. Yeah.
So, I mean, given what you said, how does the George Bush doesn't care about black people moment juxtaposed to this? And what is mentally unstable Kanye with that in mind?
Well, I mean, again, so you can't forget that. That's exactly what I was thinking earlier. I'm like, this is the same man that went out and said George Bush doesn't care about black people.
No, but was he mentally unstable then?
I don't know. See, I'm not his psychiatrist, so I don't know. But he didn't show those signs like he's showing right now.
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of tough because people are going to say, if he's mentally ill, then he was mentally ill back then.
Not necessarily.
We shouldn't necessarily take what he said into account for that.
Not necessarily.
You know what I mean? And like, which thing are both of them?
But he's using the same tactic. I mean, no matter what he's saying.
He's trying to shock you.
Yeah, it's trying to shock you, create controversy. And that is what has been his persona, which has made him relevant. I mean, that's my thing.
How helpful has it been, right? Like, I guess.
Right.
I mean, my thing is like, is it in his head that he saw himself becoming irrelevant? You know, he's 40 now, I saw, right?
Yeah.
So he's on the...
He's in a midlife crisis.
Yeah, on the grandpa side in the hip-hop industry, right? When peak performers are between 18 and 30, here he is, you know, how do I compete with Cardi B and Travis Scott and all these other people? Like, that's true. And he's got to go back to that thing that made him, and which is like, how controversial can I be? And I think he sees some kinship with Trump, just not in terms of just the politics, but Trump using those same kinds of tactics, to sort of build his brand.
Well, remember he said he wanted to run for president, and then in his song he says, "Well, Trump becoming president gives him hope for being president. Now he sees he can be president." Mm-hmm. But kind of going back,
does that scare you?
No, because no one's gonna vote for him. Like, we can't take it seriously.
I'm already scared with Trump. That's
right. That's what we need to focus on right now. But kind of going back to that mental illness thing. I mean, again, I'm not a psychiatrist, but sometimes it's just like any other disease. When you have something that goes untreated for a long period of time, it starts to get worse and worse and worse. So we could say maybe he was mentally unstable back in the day, perhaps, but it just seems like something was untreated and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Do
we think that the death of his mom
and that's exactly what I was about to say, like his mom
with that have triggered a lot of things that are there, and there's no balance in his life right now?
Yeah, I'm sure it all plays a role.
Did you forget, remember after his mom died, he went on the red carpet with a bottle of Henny.
He also broke up with his girlfriend at that time too. And then not Amber Rose, but before Amber Rose.
It was like some college educated woman. He was exactly.
Y'all know too much about his man.
Alexis. That was around, but also when that happened, we got like we got 808s of Heartbreak, like some really deep,
I was thinking about that earlier.
We got some really deep stuff.
You really don't want someone to create like kind of a magnum opus album. I was thinking about like Lauryn Hill, Mary J. Blige, Marvin Gaye. All of those albums were created out of like great mental trauma. Right. You know what I mean?
But that's when they say like you're in that state of like in between, and like things are just coming to you. That's great. All I know is, I mean, it could be the Kardashian curse too. Who knows?
Yes,
just like the Madden curse is the Kardashian curse. But all I know is somebody get Kanye, because he's like that old dude that go missing from the the senior citizen shelter. Yeah, they got. Have you seen last scene? Ain't just showing up at damn TMZ, just wanting to talk, and
it with incomplete thoughts. And I don't want to just excuse it just on mental illness, because even when you have a mental illness, you do. We all have a responsibility, right?
When you have a platform, right.
Yes,
as big as it is, yeah,
right. But again, we have to remember that he's not God. He's not the voice of all people. Right. Take whatever he says. It is dangerous because he does have a big platform. So now he's given fuel to these hate mongers. Yes, and now they never cared about him, and they especially hated him after he talked about Bush. Now you see him on Fox. Oh yeah, what he was saying was so profound. Like so. They're using him as a tool, so that's what's dangerous about it. But
and it's like fooling black people. We know that white people who don't know black people,
right,
think that we're a monolith, and now Trump's support has doubled or something for black people, just because Kanye is saying these things, which isn't true. They're not willing to go investigate that and learn that it's true. It also reaffirms what they already believe anyway.
Right, exactly.
Well, since he likes to talk about numbers, since there were so many of us, why didn't we go out and revolt or whatever? We had there. He's one person. No. I'm saying he's one person. Well, yeah, of course, he's one person. So there are millions of black people. It's up to us to continue to fight and try to silence him, and while he gets his help.
Right.
If he gets his help.
The last person I've seen, and I was thinking about this, that has the same thing going on with them, was Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, when he was on his meds, like when he had the right control next to him, people next to him, he didn't say much. He wasn't getting himself in trouble, right? He wasn't getting himself in trouble. He boxed. He didn't have trust issues. And then when that person or those people that he loved and trusted passed away, and then there was no more anyone to protect him, and then the snakes and vultures got a hold of him, people that really didn't have his best interests got a hold of him. He turned into something else. Right, and that's the same thing with Kanye. You still got good music from Kanye. You still got knockouts from Mike Tyson, but there was something else brewing in the background. Hence, here comes the rape charge. Okay, now he's going to jail. Don King is taking his money. Here comes 808s and Heartbreak. Or here comes My Dark Twisted Fantasy. But here comes the rants and raves and all this stuff about whatever he's not feeling at the time at his concerts. And then here comes Tyson getting out of jail and he's biting ears off. He's still fighting, but he's biting but they're not the same people. But then now you see Tyson at a point where he seems to be back to, he's away from all that got him where he was.
Yeah, I saw his one-man show when he came to DC, joined that Spike Lee produced.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, definitely check it
really
out.
Good documentary.
It's super interesting.
What's it called?
Tyson.
Yeah, Tyson. And one man. Yeah, I think it's called Tyson.
Yeah.
And he just talks about everything.
His life. Yeah, everything
with humor. Right.
Yeah, I mean, and it's it's basically a no filters. This is what happened from my perspective. Right. So you can kind of, take from it what you will, but it's very transparent. You know what I mean? And from talking about rape to talking about
the death of his daughter, to being molested, all kinds of stuff that, you don't really see anyone really kind of show themselves in that way.
Right. Interesting.
All right. So Rob, welcome to the show. Let's talk. You're a very interesting guy to me, so that's why I wanted to have you on the show.
Okay.
Because I feel like as long as I've known you, you always had some interesting stories or experiences and things that I wanted to dig deep into. And maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I feel like my gut instinct is telling me that we get some good stories out of you tonight.
Okay.
So I just want to start with, you said you're from Augusta, right?
Augusta, Georgia.
So,
that's right.
Tell us about growing up in the South.
Well, so, I always think about when you say you grew up black and in the South, again, what images come to people's mind, and it might be dusty, barefoot kids in tin roof houses.
Right.
And that was so far from my experience,
Well, what year let's start with the year. What year were you born?
So I was born in 1969. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s and the 90s. And, I like to think of myself as a civil rights baby.
Okay.
I have just 6 siblings. There's 7 of us. And I'm the youngest. And I'm the first one in my family that was born in an integrated hospital. Wow. So it's like I started out with this new world, this new thing that we were all experiencing. So the 70s was like this experiment.
Right. When was King was assassinated in
68.
68. Okay, so
I was born the next year.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And, the schools in my town have been integrated in the 60s. So I started out first grade in an integrated school. Schools got more segregated over time. So by the time I graduated from high school was 87% black, like the show on the Atlanta school. But everything I started, it was this new world for us. Black people were traveling in ways for the first time. We used to take vacations. My family used to go to the beach. So we were doing things in the 70s that my ancestors and my parents even weren't doing on a regular basis. And it normalized that kind of world for us. I didn't know racism existed because we lived in this wonderful bubble and this wonderful black community. Everybody worked. Everybody owned their own home. Nobody was rich. Nobody was millionaires. Right. But that was what was normal to you. So that, and Augusta, has a big military base. So we had exposure to Army officers, has a HBCU. So, I would go to the college president's house. Nice. We had businesses, banks, insurance companies. So that was the world that was just normal to me. So when you go out the South and people start to think about the Black Southern experience being this thing, I'm like, well, what are you talking about? That's not the world that I knew.
What's the age between you and your oldest sibling?
My oldest brother is 12 years older than me.
So he lived through a lot of the world before you were.
So he had 12 years of that experience, right? So he started off in segregated schools. He remembers King. He would have remembered the Voting Rights Act and things like that. But even then, I think probably the world that he lived in was very sort of secured. Our parents created a very secure world. They sheltered you from the outside white supremacist oppressive world that was the South, and the arbitrariness of it. That's what my father always talks about, is how, he grew up, born in the 30s, is that white supremacy and segregation, you had to create rules of what that was. Right. And those rules differed slightly in different towns. So in one town, maybe if you were black, you could ride a cab, but it had to be with a black cab driver. And maybe another town, you couldn't catch a cab at all. Maybe in one town, you could shop in the stores, but you couldn't try on the clothes, or maybe you had to walk in a separate door. So black people had to figure this system out wherever they went. And it's amazing to me that, black people didn't go crazy. They're not schizophrenic because they had to juggle this world and understand how to survive. And that's kind of, the source of a lot of my stories of how people navigated those systems in that world, where you're constantly having to figure out, how do I live my best life with all of this around me?
Where does, in your opinion, being from Georgia, where does the South end? Because you're talking, we're in Maryland. Do you consider Maryland the South?
I mean, I guess I don't feel DC is culturally the South, and I hear this discussion all the time. Like, when I'm riding the bus or the train in DC and I hear the high school kids talk, I have no idea what they're talking about. This is not Southern lingo that I know and understand and grew up with, and the music and the things that they have kind of just see as their culture seems very different than what I knew as Southern culture. And there's obviously a kinship. I mean, everybody I know who lives in D.C. or Maryland seems to have relatives in North Carolina or South Carolina. So there's that kinship there. But I think it is culturally slightly different. And for me, I think about it, too, in terms of, a lot of people migrated to D.C. because there was opportunity in government jobs. And, there was a larger bubble of that kind of community that we could migrate to that was different than what we were experiencing, what my ancestors were experiencing in the South. So DC was still segregated, so that might be the sort of the definition of what was Southern, and that legacy is still there. But it doesn't feel like a Southern city to me. And that's what I think that, going back to Atlanta, he gets so right too. Visually, you can tell this is the South. They're not faking it. This is not filmed in some back lot in Hollywood trying to fake Atlanta. It looks like Atlanta looks. Those bungalow houses, the ranch houses, those garden apartments. You know, people in Atlanta don't walk around on busy sidewalks like they do up here. So it's culturally and physically, it's just very different.
Right.
When did you leave Georgia?
I guess college officially, you know. I guess in a way I feel like I haven't left there yet. My dad is still down there. So we go back a couple times a year usually. But I left 18, went to college outside of Chicago, and was just desperate to get out of the South. You know, just couldn't wait to leave. And that was part of the thing that got me kind of in that direction to go to college.
Why did you want to leave?
And this is kind of an interesting thing to me to now. You know, it's like you felt like there was this whole world out there. And you know, the outside world is telling you that your world doesn't have value, right? And I think about when I was a kid and I used to watch movies and TV shows, and it would always be like, you know, these blonde white kids in sunny California and sunny suburbs in California, or living in high rises in New York. So I thought that's what was important, right? You know, that's the real world that we should aspire to. It didn't dawn on me that, you know, my world had value, and I kind of circle back to that and trying to tell stories about that world because I want to say it is important, you know.
Right. And when you go back, do you feel like it's still the same, or has it grown a little?
It's grown, and you know, I think people find a comfort zone. You know, a lot of Northerners are moving to the South. You can buy land and property cheaper, and you know, there are opportunities in places like Atlanta. You know, the Mecca for Black people now. But sometimes I'll go back and I'll walk into a restaurant and you can just feel like that sort of old Southern white aristocracy oppression, and you can just makes my skin crawl sometimes. And you know, you want to go in there and just fight that right when you see it. Right. But I think Black people in the South know how to navigate that space and just have kind of moved that to the side and are living their best lives in the South. You know, when I go home and see my friends, you know, they're loving it. You know, they, you know, can live nice lives and have friends and do their thing in a space that they love. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, we'll kind of go into that. Do you find that Black people up north, like where we are, or even more north of where we are, do you find Black people deal with racism or oppression differently than they do in the South?
I think, you know, obviously the long-standing view on that is, you know, Northerners are more aggressive and more in your face, and Southerners had more kind of subversive tactics because the threat was more real in the South. You know, I always think about this quote that Andy Young used to say about Malcolm X. You know, it's like, you know, it's easy to be bad in Harlem. You know, try Selma. You know, and I think Black people understood that in the South and had tactics for that. But, you know, I think right now we're all dealing with the same thing. You know, Trump is the president of everybody, and we're all feeling the effects of that.
I think this, I don't know if everybody, I'm sure everybody in this room has done this. When you go out of town somewhere you've never been before and you go to eat at a restaurant, you always base it off of how the town is, but how many Black people you see in the restaurant.
Exactly.
You see in the restaurant.
How safe is this place? How many Black people do I see?
That's what I do. I'll go to a Waffle House. I'll go anywhere if I eat outside of my comfort area, and I'll base it off of my experience of what I'm going to have is how many Black people I see in the restaurant. CB wouldn't have that experience.
Wait, do you mean like if you would have a good experience if there are more Black people, or a bad experience?
I get more comfort knowing that, somebody else Black is in here.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
But I just
anywhere
think
you go, though.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people do that. And so let's talk Strivers. Robert wrote a book full of short stories called Strivers and Other Stories. So my first question is, how long did it take you to write this book?
That's an interesting question because, I mean, I didn't sit down and write it at one time, right? It was a bunch of short stories that I put together in a manuscript. And I had been trying to get the stories published as a book for a long time. And I had a pool of about maybe 30 stories that I had written. And I had put together different sets of stories. And so this particular publisher, Washington Writers Publishing House, what they do, they sponsor a contest every year, and they award a fiction writing winner and a poetry winner, and that's the books that they publish. So I had been sending it out to agents and contests and things, and I kind of just did it as a lark that year because I was really working on a novel. That was my focus, but I just like to feel like I'm doing something in the writing arena, so I submitted that. So the book won, but the stories that happened to be in there, and a few got edited out, but there are 15 in there. Probably the first one was written more than 20 years ago, you know? And the last one was probably written just before the book got published in 2016.
Wow.
So can you tell us a little bit about your process of writing each of these stories? Like how did you come up with the premise of the stories, and how did you research, etc.?
I mean, you know, a lot of them are rooted in family lore and things that I heard from my father. My father grew up, his father owned a grocery store, and it was the center of the neighborhood in the black community. And so a lot of people were there. So my father would always tell me these stories about these people, and I would kind of put these things in the back of my head. But a lot of my stories start with kind of a question, right? You know, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And I just start writing from that question. And sometimes they'll start from particular characters or people that I knew, and I start writing about them. And then I try to layer a story on top of that, thinking about, okay, what would this character do in this situation? And then, you know, over time and just kind of needling through that, you end up with a story where kind of you have a central conflict and a character and a kind of trajectory in the plot. And a lot of the stories kind of evolved that way. I mean, I can think about like every story in there, a particular event, a particular person, or something that I heard that triggered the initial thought. It may not be what the story actually ended up being about, but it was the impetus for me writing that story. And part of it too for me is, you know, I want to tell the stories of characters and people that don't have their stories told a lot of times, and that was an opportunity for me to do that.
So these are loosely based on reality?
I would say loosely based. I mean, they're kind of like remixes, you know, you know, if you can think of it in that term, because it might be a character or something here put into a situation here, and through my imagination, kind of evolving that into a true story. And something that I want to say about these characters and how they're navigating the world that they live in to live their best lives, which is kind of the theme of the book, Strivers, you know, of all the stories that are together.
So where can we find this book at if our listeners are, all six of them want to read this book?
It's on Amazon. It had a short run, you know, in the local Barnes and Nobles, which was a nice thing that I got done. But so it's a small independent press, and it's interesting. You know, part of this has been me learning about the publishing business and how that works, and how it's a new world now, and you can be in a small independent press and get your book out there in a way that you couldn't 20 years ago. But it's still, the publishing business is dominated by a few big monsters in New York who have the publicity money to sort of push and promote the books that they sell. So you're competing in that space still. But, you know, if Beyonce tweeted this tomorrow, I'm sure I would sell 1 million books.
Or Oprah.
So if you're listening, Beyonce, you know.
Can you get this digitally?
You know, I did not do a Kindle version. It's something I still probably need to do. Okay. But it was such a focus on getting the print version out that we didn't really focus on it.
Right.
So the time between me winning the contest and going through the editing and going through book setting was a matter of 6 months. So it's really a collapsed time period, which is, you know, at the big houses, press houses, it's almost 2 years. So I was trying to do in 2 years, in 6 months, what's normally kind of a 2-year process.
Okay.
Wow.
He did all that while working full time. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I had help. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Still.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who are you reading?
Who am I reading right this minute? I'm reading Jasmine Ward, the book Sing Unburied Sing, which won the National Book Award. But I like to just kind of read a lot of different things at one time. I mean, I have a lot of old short story collections on my shelf that I'll just pick up in any given moment and read. I went to a writers conference last year and picked up a bunch of books from Black women writers. I said I don't read enough Black women writers, so I picked up a bunch of those writers' books. Nicole Dennis was a book I picked up in there. And I try to pick up the classics every once in a while. It inspires me to kind of read a passage and think about construction of words, and that kind of starts me to get my own writing going sometimes, is just to read some old stuff.
So, classics, are you talking like Hemingway classics, or are you talking, are you reading black classics?
I mean, mostly black stuff. I mean, I'm trying to think. I can't remember the last white writer I read, to be honest.
You don't
with
read
you.
no Stephen King?
I mean, I was an English major, and so you
had to read us.
I exhausted the canon as an English major.
Yeah.
I took 17 English. I think I counted one time. I took 17 English classes. Oof. You probably read on average 10 books. So I didn't necessarily read them all cover to cover, but somewhere, in my bookshelf, I had 170, 200 books. And so that's, Shakespeare and Hemingway and those kinds of folks.
How do we get, though, more black writers into the canon? Because I feel like in public education, especially, you don't get that until you go to a HBCU.
I think you blow the canon up. You make it irrelevant.
Yeah.
You make it not essential. And I think that's happening, with this generation of writers and academics and new avenues. I mean, and this is not to take a shot at it, but it's not sacrosanct,
Yeah.
And it. A lot of black writers didn't get to tell their stories, and those doors are opening up. And their writing is just as good, is just as meaningful, and the things they're writing about are just as meaningful. So I think you blow the canon up and don't worry about the criticism of it. And I think that's slowly happening. I mean, there's always kind of that one representative black writer, it's Tony.
That's right.
Yeah, Things Fall Apart, right? Yeah. Everybody reads that, and Toni Morrison and those kinds of things in their classes. But, I took an African American women's fiction class 30 years ago in college, where I got exposed to a bunch of writers that I had never knew existed in high school. So,
let's talk the cover art. It's been boggling me. Did you come up with the cover art?
I did not. So we had a designer, and the photo is from a local artist. I'm going to get her name wrong, Dana Ellen. So it's a portrait of Malcolm X as a Pullman porter.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
as a Pullman porter.
Yeah. Okay. So the title story is about a Pullman porter. My grandfather was a Pullman porter, so there's a title story about a Pullman porter and his family during Christmas time. Okay. But I was doing just kind of a search on the internet for Pullman porters because I knew I wanted that to be the signature picture, and I came up with the same pictures that I had been seeing everywhere and everywhere. And I stumbled upon this woman's this woman's painting. And what it actually was she did a series of paintings about D.C., different neighborhoods in D.C. And this was actually the one representative of the area around Union Station. So he was a train porter, so she did that as representative of Union Station. And I just sent her an email, hey, I like your painting. Can I use it on my book? And she was very agreeable and very excited. So I was like, okay, nice. That's cool.
Nice. Real quick. Lost my train of thought. Okay. So when you did your promo tour for the book, how hard is it promoting yourself? Or
that was very hard. So I did maybe 5 or 6 events. I did readings. They did a launch party here. I did readings at a couple of bookstores here. I did a reading at a bookstore in Riverdale that almost nobody was there, But I had a nice reading at home too. And actually I kind of went back. I think about again kind of the hip hop world and how they are the masters of self promotion. They could be dropping garbage, but it's going to be hype and this. And I had to kind of put myself in that mindset of I got a product to sell. Yeah. I have to make people interested in it. And the other thing I think I took from the hip hop world is how they talk about, they want people to identify with them. I think about something I read Questlove says, you want to get you a crew. And I try to think about that in terms of, I want people to identify with what I've written about. So when I went home and did a reading, I had a very successful reading there. And it taught me kind of to use the assets that I had. I tried to get the book reviewed in a lot of places, and that wasn't that successful with that because I'm along with 100 other people trying to do the same thing to these people up here. And I need to be sort of tapping into the assets that I have, the people that I know, people that I work with, and people that I grew up with. And that's how the book, I think, helped me get a little momentum. And it did okay. It's done okay.
Do you? Do you plan on continuing with the promotion?
No. It kind of just took a lot out of me, and I'm trying to think about if I do one of these real multi-city tours that authors do, it would just kind of just knock me over. But, like I said, I learned a lot about what you have to do. So hopefully the next time I do this, I'll be better prepared and better able to use the resources that I have to kind of make it even more successful than it was.
Did you do any social media?
I joined Twitter and I started to get active in that. I did put a Facebook page up. But again, I was just like,
it's a lot of effort.
You got to manage this persona. And I was like,
And Twitter's a horrible place sometimes.
Yeah. And you've got, I've got my professional life.
Right.
And I've got this writing life, and start to say, well, can I say this on Twitter? And what if my bosses see this? And how do I explain that? So, I did do that. It really didn't, pan out to be much of a thing for me in terms of promotion. But, I did do it. And I put together a website. So I did do that as well.
Plug that real quick.
Yeah. RBTWMS.com is the website. So it's just, highlights this book and some of the other writing projects I'm working on.
Are you primarily interested in writing novels, or are you into writing, other types of content, shows, or things like that?
So I'm working. I finished a novel manuscript. So I've been trying to get an agent and promote that and get a book deal on that. And I'm actually working on a second novel right now that I'm really focusing on. But I have these things that I want to write about. Like, and kind of going back to this conversation again, I want to write about hip hop marketing. Because, I've worked in, marketing departments and stuff my whole life and career. And I was just like, so many people in corporate marketing spaces, they're just faking it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They don't know the products they're talking about. They don't know the
people they're selling to.
The people they're selling to. Mm-hmm. And I think people in the hip hop space, they know that so well. Mm-hmm. Right. They know who they're marketing to. They know what they're marketing. They know how to pitch themselves. They know how to change and evolve over time.
And
so I think
they're
that's
not afraid
interesting.
to go to a 7-Eleven and sit in the car, blasting their stuff, and get out the car and walk up to you, put their CD in your hand,
right,
and be like, "This is my work. This is what I'm working on. It's $5."
Right. I remember going to a Howard homecoming game maybe 20 years ago. And I want to say it was Nas. It may not have been, but just walking around the whole game with his poster held high. And I was like, this is brilliant, This is brilliant.
Yeah.
There's ways to be heard.
So I have a question about the book. Do you find any of the stories here would be helpful for, what kind of lessons do you talk about in the book that would be helpful for, us as Black people in everyday life in this day and age?
There's not big morals to the story, but I think the connecting themes again are just how people navigate these spaces with white supremacy and oppression and all these things that are forces outside, and just live their lives.
It's like you got to be a beautiful mind just to live life. You're like,
and what people do to do that. And I think the title story kind of touches on that a little bit too. It's people make sacrifices. People, find ways to navigate the challenges of living in I'm gonna get myself in trouble, but a white supremacist culture.
No, it is what it is.
That is America. America is built as a white nation. The institutions are supporting white supremacy, and they still do. And we got to figure out, how do you battle that? What's the tactics to battle that?
So what do you do every day to live your best life? Because I know you mentioned that several times about living your best life. How do you do that? I find we're not out here living the lives that our ancestors lived, and obviously we're not going through civil rights, but we do have institutional racism that we have to combat every single day. And at a certain point, it starts to get to you as a human being. But what do you do to overcome those challenges on an everyday basis?
Focus on the small things for me is a thing. The small things that bring me joy in life. Writing brings me joy. Some days I'm come rushing home, I have an idea that I want to write about. So that's what I focus on. And eliminating the petty nonsense. It took me a while to get to that point in life, but doing that as well. But still sort of keeping your moral center and your integrity and fighting for what you think is right. and finding sort of productive ways to do that. And I mean, also for me is supporting and highlighting and celebrating Black genius and Black success and Black creativity. You know, one of the biggest things that spurred me on doing this process was people telling me, "Oh, this is good," or "Keep trying that," or "Oh, I like that," or "Keep doing that." So I've taken that and started doing that to other people, especially those who are in creative endeavors, just to give them that little bit of encouragement and to celebrate Black creativity. You know, ignore all that nonsense. I mean, not ignore it, but don't let it eat at you.
Yeah.
And do your thing, whatever your thing might be.
Focus on the Black excellence. I think that we're in that era right now.
Right.
Of like promoting it and
we almost have to self-promote ourselves.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you look at people like Issa Rae and
Yeah.
Glover.
Yeah, I mean, this is just what they've done is brilliant. I mean, this younger generation. You know, I'm about to hit 50, but this younger generation has
tap into a market that no one's gotten to, or even they have something very different.
Exactly,
and they just capture the eye, and it takes time to get there. But
it sure does.
It's not just different, but one thing he touched on earlier is specific. You know what I mean, and authentic.
Right. Right.
You know?
Very true.
And I think that being able to identify those characteristics and not necessarily need to look to the stars to find them, like just find them in your everyday interactions, you know, is the way forward.
Right. So when we talked about, you mentioned, you know, white supremacy still exists as far as, you know, whether it's in ownership or anywhere you look, it could be there. Underlying, you not even know it. So how do you feel about Kaepernick's stance, knee to, you know, Black and racial injustice?
I mean, it was heroic to me, you know, and I think he's taken that platform and he's moved in the right direction. I mean, hopefully he can do something positive, you know, with whatever he's dealing with the NFL. But I would, you know, not even focus on trying to be a football player. Now, you've got this wonderful platform. He's articulating it perfectly. I love that he's bringing other personalities into the discussion. He's giving them an avenue to participate in this discussion in an easy way. Hey, give money to this cause that's doing good work. And that's an easy thing for somebody who's famous, who may be a little kind of cautious about trying to do something. Here's an easy way to do it. And he can take the lumps that he takes from, you know, crazy Trump people.
Right. And it boggles me how much people act like they're unaware of what he's talking about, that these things still happen. No matter, it could be on the news every day about somebody else or another story here and there, and they still don't get it.
It boggles my mind. You know, here there's this video evidence. Right. You know, like what more do you need?
They don't get it. They just justify it.
Yeah.
Well, but they don't even want to try to understand. Okay, he chose the national anthem and the flag for a reason. There's a racist verse in the national anthem, and yet us Black people, we go up there and we sing it. Like, they don't have a verse in there that talks about how we're not people and how we should be killed. Like, there's an actual verse in the national anthem that says that. And so him kneeling to that and then say, well, you're disrespecting our troops. Really? Did you guys see that video? The two Black women who were, I forgot. They were
that was in Georgia, yeah.
Right. So if you never heard the story, it was a few weeks ago, two Black servicewomen, they go into a restaurant, and the video, it just starts from like the altercation. So there was a white woman who was cussing at her and calling her Black lesbian and like hit her. And, you know, that's an example of, well, you say respect our troops, but then here you see this white person sitting here physically assaulting and verbally assaulting Black women who are in uniform, like they had on their uniform. And so it's always that contradiction, it's always that hypocrisy that's there. Just like they always find a reason to justify it. Well, you know, you have to put your hand over your heart, and like I'm all for that, but let's just, you know, not make up excuses for your justifying it's pretty much like, shut up and play. You're making millions of dollars.
Right.
So what are you complaining about? And that undertone too is kind of like, well, we gave you this money. Not that these black men worked hard for, to be in the position that they're in, but it's just like, we gave you this money, so shut up and play. And it's all this crap.
You reminded me of a podcast that I heard this week that was super brilliant on the Ezra Klein show. He's the guy who I believe is the lead editor for Vox. And he had a show on, I think it was called like The Age of Mega Identity, and it was around the psychology behind identity, and then how in the way you identify yourself, how that impacts your politics, and then how do those identities and those political affiliations impact each other. So you might have groups. You have groups of people who, like, okay, we in this room, we may all identify as black people, but then the three of us identify as black males, where you identify as a black woman, and how those different things interplay with each other and the psychology behind them. So if you get a chance, like, check it out.
Yeah,
it was
definitely.
Nice. I was gonna say, so a lot of us protested NFL this year.
I don't think I'm going back.
I would. So I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't quite one of those ones who gave up on the NFL, but I understood. I think I understand why I should. Because you look at it, if you break it down, and someone told me this the other day, and it makes sense, that the NFL is nothing but a slave auction. You got a bunch of white owners, and then you have a combine where you try out the best of the best athletes, whether in weight training, how tall they are, how strong they are, what they can do, how good they are for you, and then you put them in the pool and you pick them for your team.
Yeah, I mean, the optics are definitely,
right.
That type of slavery is a choice.
Right.
That
But,
type of slavery.
that's just, there's more reason to let it go.
But I have a question, though. I mean, Kaepernick isn't necessarily boycotting the NFL. He's still trying to get back in. So... But that part I never understood.
I think
for me,
it's hard to speak up for me.
It's hard to contribute to buy tickets for an organization that's denying you humanity.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm not going to buy tickets from Daniel Snyder. Like, you know what I mean?
But Ali,
exactly, it is with the
with the name.
Ali
continued
and
to fight.
The cheerleader thing.
I just heard about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was saying Ali continued to fight after he was blackballed.
Okay.
I mean, I would love to see what that era was like too. I mean, because they calling Kaepernick the last thing they seen like this was when Ali knew what he was going to lose when he decided he wasn't going to fight a war that didn't involve him,
right? And
he willingly did it. Suffered the consequences for years almost, and then got a chance back in. So I would love to. Just to be in there, just to feel what it felt like, if it kind of felt the same way as it feels now to us in 2017 and 18. But, were you around then, Rob?
No. I was a baby.
Okay. Who do you feel, I know everybody looks for Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton as the quote-unquote black leaders. To me, I feel like they're outdated. Who do you feel are some of our new black leaders that we should look to?
I don't know if there's ever going to be a singular figure like that anymore. I mean, I look for leadership in different areas, whether it's entertainment, creativity, politics,
groups.
Also,
like Black Lives
do you
Matter?
need them? But B, also, we know so much about everybody that nobody can be perfect anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And even, to this day, even though we deify, people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they also had their shortcomings. Bill Cosby's kind of like a perfect example of all this. How when stuff comes to light, you know what I mean, and you look at the fullness of the person, then you start to struggle with, okay, was this good for me or not? You know what I mean?
Now, was Cosby outside of TV dad, was he ever more than that, just outside of being like a great figure on TV?
I thought he was, until, for me, like I told you like last week, I started having a problem with Cosby. I didn't know about all those all those rumors and stuff like that, but or the allegations of rape, which I think the industry seem to know about for decades. But I started really having a problem with Cosby when he, like in the early 2000s, when he started doing those tours and talking about, black men need to pull their pants up and all that kind of stuff, blaming us for.
He was bringing conversations that we were having. Yeah, he was bringing like our conversations that were supposed to be like not necessarily held in private, but then he put us on blast in front of.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily even putting us on blast.
Well, that's what a lot of black people were upset about.
It was kind of a straw man argument in the first place. You know what I mean? Like the pants didn't have anything to do with what was happening to people and it just wasn't helpful, in trying to bring us up, and I had to kind of put them on the shelf. As these things started to come to light, though, it's with the things he was doing in the backdrop of him trying to tell us how we're supposed to live is the issue,
hypocrisy.
Yeah.
So today, I never knew that he did an interview. I don't know if it was like the late 80s or the early 90s, but he started talking about something called Spanish Fly.
Yeah. I saw that Larry King interview too.
I just saw that today. I was like, what?
He had a stand-up.
That was a famous routine.
I didn't know that. See, like you said, like the industry knew about this forever, but no one did anything.
Do you think? I mean, you're a little bit older than us. If you had heard that routine, that was a famous routine. Were you already thinking in the eyes of that's not right, or was that regular?
I mean, not at all, because Cosby was positioned like as the anti-younger generation, like the anti-Eddie Murphy. Okay, right? He was the clean, old school,
Phil.
Right. He's telling dad jokes, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, even when I grew up, he was like the old corny dude, even then, and he fed into that persona, right?
Yeah.
That's what got him the show. That's what kind of people kind of took away from the show, that he was the dad.
He actually wrote that book that he wrote, like Parenthood or whatever. That's what led him into that show. I can't remember if it came maybe just before the Cosby Show. He like wrote a book called Parenthood, and then went on tour. A comedy tour off that book, and then I think he flipped that into it was Bill Cosby himself was the.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Did
we're talking about black men. Did you go to the Million Man March?
I did. I sure did. I took off from work and had a little argument with a white coworker, telling me that Farrakhan was racist. And I said, well, he might be, but I'm still going,
Right.
And I got my button that's sitting on my wall right now. It was quite a day.
Stay from school that day.
How do we get back to that? Like, do you feel like we can ever get back to like a movement like that?
I mean, I'm excited about Black Lives Matter. And and I love that there's not kind of a singular face associated with it. And I think they hit the right note with the slogan. And they've gotten real point arguments about what we want and what the demands are. An agenda, exactly. And a lot of smart young people are sort of glomming onto that. And so I'm excited for movements like that, looking versus a singular charismatic leader. I mean, I had some problems with Farrakhan and that whole Million Man March. I'll never forget being at the Million Man March and seeing them passing around buckets and putting money. I'm like, I ain't putting no money. You got it.
They had a collection plate.
Just going straight to Farrakhan's mansion in Chicago, But it was a wonderful event. It was, spiritual. I saw like high school friends that I hadn't seen, and it was people coming up and giving you dap, and it was wonderful and beautiful. But I would love to see us move away from seeking a singular charismatic leader and rallying around
everybody jumping in,
and movements that can take on different lives in different spaces.
Yeah. I remember John Henry Clark. There was a documentary that they did on him on Showtime, maybe 20 years ago, and he kind of talked about the problem with marches in general. He thought that strategy had kind of run its course because we're marching, but then what?
Right.
I think the women's march though this year.
Last year,
sorry.
This year, no one showed up.
Fast year, exactly. But it was it seemed like that had an infrastructure behind it. I still get text messages about meetings and stuff like that that's going on. So it's like, I think they figured out how to leverage technology in order to, implement that strategy that they're putting together.
Right. Do you think Obama brought change?
I mean, I think we may not see that change for a while. And what I talk about is, he brought to the highest levels of government a whole set of people who had not been there before. And we're just starting to beginning to see, the effects of that. And I think he brought forth the sense of possibility, It's going to be interesting to me to see if the senator from California, Kamala Harris, if she's going to run. And people would, 10 years ago, we might have thought, or 20 years ago, that's crazy. But now we kind of see that possibility. Yeah. And the biggest accomplishment, besides whatever we can pinpoint from his legislative agenda, healthcare or whatever, to me, it was he created a map of how to build a coalition to do this. Mm-hmm. We didn't think that existed. We didn't think white people could be brought in to elect a black man. And he showed, for better or worse, that is possible if you position your message in a certain way. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's the biggest change to the political landscape. That I think that he brought the sense of change is possible. And I'm really excited for the next election because I think we might see multiple black candidates.
I was going to say, that reminds me of Chris Rock is kind of prolific in his jokes because he can foresee a lot of things. And he said that we need to thank George Bush, the second one, for Obama.
Oh, definitely.
And he's like, and I am sitting here and I'm about to thank Trump for the next big thing we're about to see after Trump.
Yeah. I was going to ask that. Do you think that because Trump's whole goal is to erase everything that President Obama did, so do you see that happening the next election? Us having a person of color or a woman of color?
I think, somebody's going to run. I think Kamala Harris is going to run.
Cory Booker's also
he might run. The guy who was the governor of Massachusetts has been talking about. So I think,
so
I think the possibility, Obama created the sense of possibility. Sure. He created the roadmap and the pattern and the messaging. So you've got people Obama-like who see a pathway.
And I don't know, if you can overestimate the imagery of that. And children, you know what I mean? Like, I always think about my kids seeing the Obamas on TV.
That's like real life Huxtables.
It's removed the mental ceiling, the glass ceiling, I think, in a way that like we, can't necessarily understand.
Like that picture of that little girl that was looking at Michelle Obama's portrait.
Right.
That's a powerful picture right there.
Right.
I wish I was that age and saw, the first lady being a black woman. It's just you grow up, and now she has more time in her life, and she can grow up knowing that she can be anything that she wants to be. Yeah. She'll have to work harder, of course, because that's just the reality of the game. But she knows it's possible, and your kids, they know it's possible.
Yeah.
I think the Obamas taught us how to live. They showed you how to live.
Classy.
They showed you love. Mm-hmm. Like, what other president before that did you see love? Clinton didn't show you that he loved his wife. Mm-hmm. Bush didn't show you that he loved his wife. They loved their family. Like, you saw him with his daughters. You felt like, man, this dude, like, no matter whatever, if there's skeletons to be uncovered, whatever, but this man showed you how to love your kids, love your wife, how to have fun with whatever you're doing. I mean, they danced. I mean, every time you saw them together or every time you see them there, they're like, yo. Like this is black excellence, But this is America. Like if it's all about family and it's all about love, and this family right here showed you what it's all about, because this next family that's in there right now
showed the opposite.
Complete opposite. The wife don't live in the house. The wife don't sleep in the same bedroom.
Another real way too. I mean, if you look like locally, PG County for county executive this year, you got 3 black women running for that office. I've never seen that before. You know, and I don't even know if anyone else is running. You know what I mean? You have 3 black women at the top of the ticket. Like,
I mean, they always say black women are the ones that are stepping up in the political game more than any group of people. And that's just the truth of the matter. Like, you see all these different organizations that, you have She Can Run. That's an organization that's built for women or promoting women to run for office. But then there's some other, I don't know the names of the organization, but I remember Angela Rye talking about it. And there's something that she's putting together to kind of promote Black women to run for office, or if they don't want to run for office, be behind the scenes to try to get different minorities to actually get some type of political power. Because at the end of the day, we have to have that political power. We have to have economic power, all that good stuff. So
I think Obama led the idea around having a diverse staff. And you've seen corporate America kind of take that on slowly, but I can vouch for the organization I work for. They've really kind of taken the charge in trying to promote diversity and making that like a core value of the organization.
Like, I remember his last day in office, like they focused more around him leaving than inauguration. But then just when he gave his final speech at Andrews before he got off on the plane, but just to see not just us, but the white people admire him, like they like in tears, and just how much they looked up to this dude and what he left, and the fact that I don't think 45, is that what it is?
Yeah.
He'll be able to erase. You can't erase that.
it'll be celebrations all
you can't
up and
erase
down DC.
no matter what you try. You can't erase what people
He'd
feel
be
in
better
their hearts
off
and in their
trying to
mind.
erase Black Panther.
Exactly. Right. It's not gonna happen.
Well, we had to try to work hard to prevent, let us say, for example, another person of color who gets into office. We had to try to prevent another Trump situation from happening again. Like, someone that's going to come in there and try to erase everything that...
Can we have devil's advocate real quick, though?
Sure.
Like, to me, I also really think this time is beautiful in a way because people are activated in a way you've never seen in a long
that's
time.
True.
So in a way, it's kind of, and not only people activated, people are also the sheen has been removed. We know where we are now.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
And people have kind of exposed themselves. So,
that is very true.
Yeah. So I mean, in a way, it's kind of also been helpful in that.
Oh yeah.
and for once,
unfortunate but helpful.
I think again the youth are charged to vote.
Yeah.
In
a way that no other generation beforehand. I think.
Because we got complacent.
The school shootings.
Those, especially those kids, they're super motivated to X out all the big players.
Right, that's beyond race.
Exactly, that's everybody.
But there are arguments that the kids down in was it Parkland, with the march that just happened, there has been a lot of arguments or discussions saying that they're looking to protect a certain group of kids. It's not inclusive enough to represent the threats of violence that Black students face on a day-to-day.
Even having that kind of conversation is
that's true.
I wasn't talking about that in high
That's
school.
true. That's true.
Exactly.
I could well, you don't know what I was thinking about in high school, but
okay.
I wasn't talking about that.
Exactly.
But I think the midterms are always important. But I think we got complacent with Obama. He gave us 8 great years, and then we felt like we didn't have to go back out. Everybody thought it was a shoe-in.
Controversy.
We thought it was a shoe-in.
This is just a mess. Like, he's only been in there for what, a year? I can't keep up anymore. I can't. Even his people can't even keep their story straight. Like,
Rudy Giuliani.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you. Spilled all the tea.
We thought Kanye on TMZ was bad. Rudy on.
Came and spilled all the tea.
I can't believe like the stuff he's saying, given his history, man. Like the Central Park 5,
Come on now.
all the stuff that went on in New York.
Come on.
When he was mayor, man. Like
it's a mess.
But I think it was like really healthy conversation. Like, it was good.
Yeah.
CBU gotta go way more often, man.
Right.
So we can open up
please.
we can lock the doors, and just let it all out.
That's my mentee.
I feel like we need to do a part 2. Like I want to get the book so I can
let's do that.
Read it and then ask more questions.
Definitely, we can need to do
Everyone
that.
go out and get this book.
Have him on my show, man.
Right.
Next
Let's do
time,
it.
right.
Okay. So let's do that. Plug your show real quick.
Yeah, Superfly Friends. At Superfly Friends on iTunes, Google, SoundCloud, Stitcher. I'm now that I know that you guys are working on Spotify, I'm gonna jump on the Spotify wagon too.
And that's
make it work.
We Are Something Else. WERSUMTHINELSE. iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, and we're gonna work on Stitcher this week, and we're working on getting on Spotify this week. Definitely. Right, go ahead and plug your stuff one more time.
RBT WMS is the way to go just to find the book. You can find it on Amazon as well. Drivers and other stories.
We're gonna try to get Rob updated. We're gonna try to find you a marketing person for your social media.
For the next
you need
book,
you need to be heard, man. So speak
right.
on that real quick. So how long before the novel's ready?
I mean, I have a novel manuscript that I'm pushing out there, trying to get read and seen, and I'm working on a new novel that may be the better one that actually gets published. We'll see.
Okay.
That's gonna be a New York Times bestseller.
Can people find you on social media at all? Or is the website the best place?
The website's the best place. I mean, I don't post enough to make the social media relevant, but yeah, the website.
Use your avenues, brother.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. We are Something Else. Roya, thank you for filling in for CD.
You're welcome.
Rob,
Thanks for having me.
Superfly.
Yes, sir.
All right. Peace.
And then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid.